Yo, what up? Before we start, a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, my Discord friend. My Discord friend chained me in their basement and held a gun to my head and told me if I didn't make this video, they'd take my life away. And also, before we start, I'd like to do a little bit of changing. You see, I don't like having there being no face to relate the voice to. So instead of this dumbass AI picture,
Look at this dude.
we're going to use this little Minecraft doodad. Ta-da! Wow, look at that. Look at that. Ain't she purty? Look, you can do like little poses. You can make her like do that or do that. It's crazy. Um. Uh. Also, I have this one. Isn't she scary? Um. Also, I would like to thank Iron Duke for spying half of the screenshots. Some of these generals I didn't have maxed out, and some of these generals I didn't even buy. So I got. You could probably tell the difference between my screenshots and his screenshots, and also a few other screenshots were provided by my friends on Discord. So big shout out to Iron Duke though. Big shout out. Also, that little samurai hat you saw on the other person, her name's Luna. That is from that's from the mod Samurai Dynasty, are linked in the description if you play Minecraft on Java. Just, read everything that needs to be required for it and, the versions that is required for it. And yeah, so cool. Thanks to those mods for, letting me use those assets for the little dude. That's pretty cool. I'll stop rambling now. Enjoy the video. Yo, what up? It's time for the long-awaited guide of all generals in European War 5 ranked. From my opinion, I have every single general that is in the game, from the lowest of the grays to all of the IAPs. Every single one. So this will be a very in-depth guide. It'll go over everything, all unit skills, general skills, and how well they'll be, on the battlefield and everything. I'll rank them in like an S through F tier list, with S at the top, F at the bottom, obviously, and S being, like the best of what they should be doing, and everything, and F being the worst of the worst, absolute garbage. A few things before we start is that I will not be discussing any relics or any generals with relic combinations or any generals that might be worse because of relics. For example, Genghis Khan with Bottle of Life is a very powerful combination, and it makes generals like Moctezuma basically like useless for someone that has a Bottle of Life. So I'm going to rate the generals as how they are. So no bottle of life, no relics, no nothing. I will also be discussing any emblems or special weapons that they have, and I'll rank them both with how they are without them and how they are with them. And if a general has both relic and emblem, I'm just gonna like rank them as if they had both. Like, I'm not gonna give another rating of what if he only has the emblem, or what if he only has the weapon and not the emblem, just to make things a little bit shorter and smoother. So we're gonna start off with Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, like all cavalry general, has the track ability, which gives him a 50% boost to archers, and an ability to attack again after destroying the enemy. That's for every single cavalry unit. His second unit skill is Stomp, which gives 100% damage to infantry. Martial skill gives 600 health, and its emblem gives him 50 attack, 50 defense, 2 speed, 500 hit, and a chance to cause confusion with a 25% damage received when attacked by archers. So he gains a little bit of a mini shield along with a small chance of rumor. I assume it's 30%, but it doesn't really say, so I have to guess. His trident is a very powerful weapon. 200 attack, 200 hits, 10% crit chance with 20% crit damage, and an unknown chance to enter high morale when attacking. When in high morale, another enemy in range will receive a splash attack. Very powerful weapon. It definitely helps with crowd control too, and helping him build rage. Not that his active is anything good. It's niche. I mean, you want to use it regardless, but it's not an amazing active. I would say definitely A tier without his emblem and his weapon, and S tier with his emblem and weapon. He is one of the most powerful cavalry generals in terms of damage and tankiness too. Next, we got Washington. Washington has a 30% chance to not get counterattacked with an extra 70% damage to archers, and his incendiary gives 75% damage to cavalry and 50% damage to infantry. Defense Master gives an extra 80 defense. His emblem gives 2 speed, 500 hits, 10% crit chance and 10% crit damage, and an unknown chance to increase morale when attacking. His item gives 2 speed, 600 hit, 5% crit chance, 5% crit damage, and gives bravery, which is no low morale, immunity to chaos, and gain a samurai perk. Washington is definitely a nuke general. He is going to do the most damage on your team, but that makes them very vulnerable to leadership, because his whole thing is damage. So if he gets leadership, that damage is cut in half, and you're just like, well, shit. Logistics is a 100% chance at max to get 12% HP. I would say that he's more practical on pure archer, so like you're only running archer, like maybe one artillery, because you have more commanders, and that gives him more power, so his nuke potential is even greater. On an archer cavalry combo team, combining both archer and cavalry, you have better nukes that still do good support. Like an example, Oda Nobunaga and Li Hongzhang, they are very powerful, but also they're very supportive. So the need for a nuke that it can only do damage is less useful. I would say B ranking without his emblem and weapon, low A ranking with the item and emblem. Napoleon, 200% damage to forts, and he cannot be counterattacked, and 15% HP gained when killing an enemy, and an unknown chance to attack again after killing the enemy. Attack Master gives 105 extra attack. Emblem gives 59 defense, 101 HP, 809 hits, 11% crit chance, and gives him 1 to 3 range, and another 50% damage to enemies when counterattacking. And then his item gives 65 attack, 10% crit chance, 20% crit damage, and can cause burning. He has one of the best crit potentials in the game. Very high crit chance paired with very high crit damage, and also base very high attack power. He's very, very strong. He is useful both at destroying forts with ease, and also with destroying units or heavily crippling them, because that rumor is a 30% chance to cause chaos. Very powerful indeed. I would say A ranking without, because losing that 1 to 3 range does hinder him a lot, and also without his item or his book, he'll have way less crit power. But if you have it, he's easy in S tier. Now we have King Arthur. March and an unknown chance to attack again after killing. That's for most infantry. Most infantry have that same blitz. And he also has 1-2 range, reduces received damage by 50% against archers, and 100% damage to forts. Hero's Blessing, which is his active, it gives him 150% damage to 3 units in total for 3 turns. Works with attack again, as it can trigger multiple times, so it's really easy to build up his rage. Braveness at max gives him 100% chance to not be countered, which is really useful for infantry. Emblem gives 50 attack, 50 HP, 2 speed, 500 hit, and a 50% extra damage against cavalry, and an item gives 50 attack, 100 defense, 350 HP, and 300 hit, and gives him bravery. Bravery, again, is no loss of morale and no chance to enter chaos, while braveness is a no chance to get counterattack when attacking. I sometimes mix those two up when discussing it with other people, so braveness, no counter. Bravery, no low morale and no chaos. High A ranking without his emblem or his item, and easy S tier with his item and emblem. Next we have Murat. Again, track is the same for every single cavalry general. There is no difference. His convoy perk, the little car, gives him 15% HP when killing, and samurai. Heroic charge gives him an additional 1 range and minus 50% damage received for self and surrounding friendlies in 3 grids for 3 turns. So it's a more powerful armor defense master perk. He is definitely a very high A, I would say. The lack of an anti outside of the generic archer definitely hinders him a bit, and not having braveness or anything that can simulate it is also a bit of a downgrade, because then he can get leadership when getting counterattacked, and it'll weaken his power, which he needs that power if he wants to build up rage. But when he gets that heroic charge on, he can gather rage a lot more, and he just makes everyone way more tanky. Next we have Achilles. Achilles has ignore terrain and chance to attack again after killing, like most of their infantry. The counter perk, the shield perk, gives minus 20% damage received and no reduced morale. Morale and chaos are 2 different things. Unlike some other games like World Conquer 4, where morale leads to chaos, chaos and morale are completely different. You could double demoralize an enemy and then surround it completely, and you still won't enter chaos. Storm's Blessing, which is his active, gives 175% damage to 1 unit, and he gets 1 rage, and that lasts for 3 turns. So it isn't King Arthur's 3 targets, only a 1 target thing, which I feel is a way weaker option, even if it does more damage, because you're doing more damage to 3 units instead of just a little extra damage to just 1 unit. His item gives him 100 defense, 300 HP, 300 hit, 150 evasion, and reduces damage received by another 20%, and gives him an extra 50% damage to infantry. I would say low B without and a mid B with. It doesn't really raise them to another tier. It just fixes some of his issues just a little bit. Next we have Subutai. Subutai is a very, very, very dangerous general to play with. Subutai has March, plus 50% HP when killing, and can attack again after killing. And his other perk gives him 75% damage to cavalry, minus 50% damage received when attacked by cavalry, and 80% damage to forts. His active, King of Field, 145% damage to target and splash damage to units around a target, 3 turns. Spy, 100% chance at max to lower the defense of the enemy by 50%. He's sort of like a snowball effect, right? Once you get him started, it's hard to stop him, and if you play him too aggressively, he might take out too many enemies and just take all the rage for himself, leaving other generals that need the rage without any rage. So in the early game, he can just like steamroll everything, but in the late game, where you need to be a lot more strategic with your rage, Subutai becomes nothing more than a spy spreader, a very safe spy spreader. He's still powerful, but you need to play him a lot more conservatively, unless you have him just like tumble down and just eat all the rage. Regardless, though, I would say S tier, but very high skill ceiling. And then we have Gustavus. Gustavus has March and no counter. Um, 200% damage to fort units and 75% damage to cavalry and cause burning. His active is 200% damage to the target and will always be a crit. Gustavus' leadership, 100% chance at max level to lower the enemy's attack by 50%. A very safe leadership spreader with good attack power with his active. He's nothing too amazing, but he's definitely very unique. He's the only general that can do what he does. So that by itself is definitely very interesting. And he does what most artillery do pretty effectively. I wouldn't say he's the best at it, but he's pretty good at it. I would say A tier ranking. Caesar. Caesar has 50% damage to infantry and a chance to attack again after killing, minus 50% damage received by archers. His Cure Master gives him 270 HP to self and allies in a 2-tile radius for 3 turns. His Emblem gives 83 attack, 811 hits, 13% crit chance, 37 regen, and minus 50% damage from cavalry, and plus 30% rage growth. So that basically, rage growth helps him gather rage more effectively. And his item gives 85 defense, 10 speed, 150 evasion, and march. A tier without, S tier with. He is probably the best Cure Master general out there. He has amazing power. He has impressive speed. He can go really fast and really far. That definitely helps with, giving heals to anyone that needs it. And his crit power is also really impressive. The only issue is that he's infantry by nature, and not having 2 range kinda hurts when you have a chance to attack again, even if the chance to attack again is small. I'm not exactly sure what the exact chance is. I want to say it's 50%, but that's just me guessing based on how many times I've used him in other infantry generals with Blitz. Still very powerful. Best healing general, but there is another healing general that is more supportive than damage oriented. So if you want the same healing power, but you want more support, then you have someone else that can do that job. We'll get to him in a bit. Alexander. Alexander has 50% damage when counterattacking, and 100% damage to forts, and a chance to attack again after killing. His emblem gives 67 attack, 41 defense, 2 speed, 607 hits, and can counterattack at 3 range. So that's very powerful. It's very useful with his fort ability, tower. So you can have a pseudo artillery general with a team that doesn't have an artillery. The cannon will shoot at him. He'll be able to shoot the cannon back with his fury. That'll most likely do a lot of damage or even destroy it. And his saddle, his item gives 50 attack, 13 speed, 200 evasion, and gives him march and plus 50% damage to infantry units. I would say low B without and a high B with. He is powerful, but he just doesn't. But outside of his damage, that's basically it. And like we said with Washington, nukes by themselves on a team that's focused entirely on the type of nuke unit that they are, they can work. But if you're on a more mixed team, you want to stay away from the nukes and want to go for the people that have damage and also support. So Alexander is a little bit lower on the ranking for me. Now we have Attila. Attila has 80% damage to infantry, and his cavalry commander gives 50% damage to all allied cavalry units and self in 2 range for 3 turns. Attila is probably the face of cavalry teams, because teams of the unit are built around the commanders, and Attila is one of the strongest commanders in the game. Amazing attack, braveness to give him longevity. He's just amazing. You get Khan's power, like a little bit less, but with the support of buffing everyone, including yourself, it's amazing. He's one of the best cavalry generals in the game. Easy S tier. Robin Hood. Robin Hood has 30% damage to cavalry and 50% chance for no counter, and his longbow perk gives him an extra 1 range, so he has 1 to 3. The general skill gives 360 health, and shelter gives a minus 75% damage reduction when attacked by artillery. His item gives 20 attack, 80 defense, 190 HP, 10 crit chance, and 50% chance of triggering mass fire. Mass fire is the skill that lets you do double damage to an enemy. I would say low D tier without and high D tier with. It's a blue archer general that doesn't really have anything going for him. He has no powerful antis, because everyone has at least 30% damage to cavalry. So Robin Hood isn't really that special. There's another general that has the exact same perks as him, but has a better anti than him. And so that basically makes them better than Robin Hood. And that 50% chance to trigger mass fire, while nice, being so utterly reliant on Robin Hood's item to keep him strong is not a good sign. And also, when you're using Robin Hood in the trial that gets his item, you're using Robin Hood before you get that item, and when you do, you have like one mission, maybe two left, and so you're like, well, what the fuck? I did all that work to get Robin Hood an item that I'll never use? So on any normal team, you're probably not going to use Robin Hood. Maybe free to play if you're like budget, if you're really budget friendly, he can work, but I really wouldn't recommend Robin Hood. Xiu Kuibing has a 50% damage reduction when attacked by archers. A bugle is a 100% chance to lower the morale by 1 when at max level. Xiu Kuibing is a pretty tanky cavalry general. There's another general like him that does more power, that does basically everything Xiu Kuibing does, but better. But on a pure cavalry team, he'll be more useful than on a mixed cavalry team. Pretty average, you know, not bad average, like good average, you know. I would say an easy B tier. I have Cleopatra, 200% damage to fort units, 50% counter damage, and can cause additional burning, and her mobility lets her attack again after destroying the enemy. Cleopatra is a very unique general, as she's the only artillery general that has a 100% guaranteed chance to attack again, making her mow down fortresses pretty effectively. She is pretty frail though, but inspiring helps with her frailty and her offensive power. And the fact that she's used so common in so many princess trials definitely bumps her up, because she's still a really good artillery general and also used in so many princess trials. Very useful, very effective. I would say an easy B tier. She's not amazing, but she's definitely very versatile, and she's used in so many things. Hannibal, 100% damage to infantry. Defense expert gives an extra 50 defense. It's just that Hannibal doesn't have the power that Genghis Khan does. He simulates the anti-infantry, but he doesn't simulate the power. And if you want to simulate the power, you have Attila that can simulate that way more effectively than Genghis Khan, and while still being support. C tier. Not amazing, good early game, but late game, you're probably not going to use them as much. Maybe on a pure cavalry team, you might use them, but I wouldn't recommend it. Ahsoka, 80% damage to infantry, minus 75% damage from artillery with its shelter perk. Ahsoka is probably the worst of the cavalry commanders. His inspiration doesn't help him as much as it does with other generals. No braveness makes him super frail. And just being a blue general is already giving him more frailty than someone like Attila. If it weren't for his cavalry commander, I would probably put him in F tier, but because he has a commander skill, I'm going to put him in D tier. He's just not powerful enough and too frail to use him. Like, if you're using Ahsoka, you have to put so much into his survivability. You know, give him as much regen as possible, give him as much defense as possible, give him as much HP as possible. He's taking so much to be good, where you could be taking that good stuff and putting it on generals that are already really good and bumping them up even more. You always have to ask yourself when using a general, how much am I putting into this general to make him good? that it sacrifices other generals, you know? D tier, unfortunately. Khalid has 200% damage to fort units, 50% counter damage, and can cause additional burning, and he has 50% damage to cavalry. Attack expert gives 65 attack. Arty commander gives 50% damage to all nearby artillery and self for 3 turns with a radius of 2. Artillery commander is definitely the weakest of all the commanders. It's more used for buffing yourself than it is your allies, because having 2 artillery on one front is sort of unoptimal for me. I'd rather have 1 artillery on each front, so his commander is more buff self. But he does have Spy, which can help take down tanky walls. But you have other Spy spreaders that have some no retaliation or complete no retaliation that do that job better. But he's fine. He's not amazing, but I would say he's actually like average, like more on the lower average than the higher average. I'd give him a C tier. Leonidas.
This is Sparta!
Okay, I'm gonna be ranking the Awakened Generals and not their normal counterparts, because once you get the Awakened General, you can't use the normal counterpart afterwards. Leonidas got a pretty big glow up. March and a chance to attack again after killing the enemy. 40% damage reduction when existing. Cover just protect gives you a base 40% damage reduction entirely. His item gives 75 defense, 550 hits, 5% crit chance, 5% crit damage, 12% HP when killing the enemy, and an unknown chance to enter high morale when attacking. I would say C tier without his item and a low B tier with. He is a very safe and effective support general. Even though Bugle isn't the best debuff skill, it's still nice to have, and he's very safe when triggering it. And also he's just really tanky with survivability with Plunder. Pachacuti, definitely one of the biggest glow ups in the game. Pachacuti has 75% chance of no retaliation and plus 30% damage to cavalry, and can attack again after killing the enemy. I will say the only thing that he lost was he had one of the highest anti-cavalry in the game, but he lost that for mobility. So that is a bit of a downgrade in that regard. But he more than makes up for it with his leadership and his archer commander and his inspiration, you know, all that stuff. And like I said, archer commander 50% damage to surrounding allied archers and self for 3 turns and a 2 radius. His power definitely lowers him a bit for me, but his support is undeniably one of the best. I would say low S tier. Beowulf has March and a chance to attack again after killing the enemy, 75% damage to cavalry and infantry, 115 HP to forts and a 2 radius, and his item gives 90 defense, 220 HP, 150 hits, 15% experience gained, and can cause and is immune to burning. Beowulf probably got the short end of the stick compared to all the other Awakened Generals. His 3rd skill is amazing, it's really good. It's that his 2nd skill is actually Dog Water. That's the issue. He's basically running on 2 skills, and his active is trash. He wants power, but he doesn't have the stats to do it. D tier with and without. I won't deny he does have some good power, but it's nothing to get him above a C tier. Mulan has 50% damage to archers, 75 damage to cavalry, and plus 50% damage to infantry. Archers inherently have high attack power, and also she has Washington's buffs against enemies, just a little bit smaller. Very strong. Her free-to-play status makes her an easy A tier, but if we disregard her free-to-play status, like if you're just a pay-to-win player, I would say probably a B tier, because you can have Washington. Xerxes has March and chance to attack again after killing the enemy, 15% HP when killing the enemy, and 50% damage to surrounding allied infantry because of his infantry commander for 3 turns with a 2-turn radius. I'm just going to ignore the Blitz perk unless it gives a different buff. Xerxes, the issue with infantry is that you only have 2 good infantry commanders, and then you have Xerxes and Spartacus, who we'll go over next. You have to use one of these two for a pure infantry team. You have to use one of these two. So I would personally recommend Xerxes. Xerxes is probably the better of the two gray tier infantry commanders, but it's definitely sucks that infantry got the short end of the stick with commanders. Spartacus, same unit skills as Caesar. He's a low D tier, however. He just doesn't have the survivability as Xerxes, and Xerxes can gives a better support in the form of spy, whereas Spartacus has bugle. And Spartacus wants to do damage, but his gray tier status really hinders that. Li Shimin. Li Shimin has 200% damage to fort units and 100% counter damage. Fire Dragon allows him to do splash damage and cause burning. His burning chance is higher than other artillery generals from what I found. Easy S tier, easy S tier. He's powerful. He eats forts for breakfast and gets healed from that. His splash is also really strong. A really good crowd controller. Very strong, very powerful. Charlemagne, same unit skill as Hugh Quibing. His item gives him 65 defense, 80 HP, 420 hits, 25 regen, and all nearby allies in a 1 tile radius gain 15% damage reduction. So he's like a very, very mini defense expert bringer. Unfortunately, he just doesn't have the power to be reliable. He's a purple general that has one of the expert stat skills instead of the master. And it's defense, which I think defense is probably the weakest of the 3 stat bonuses. He's fine, but he's not amazing. I would give him a low C without his item and a mid C with his item. Richard gains mass fire and the chance to attack again after killing the enemy, and minus 50% damage received when attacked by archers. Richard is a very powerful infantry general. Good support too with that rumor, but the rumor and logistics sort of combat one another. He wants to stun, but at the same time he also wants to kill to get healed. And a lack of braveness makes it that he wants to heal more than he wants to trigger rumor, but still very strong. Probably one of the best damage dealers for infantry free to play wise. I would say low S tier. For rumor, I would say have it at least level 6 so that it lasts 2 turns. Level 6, it'll be at 60% chance to trigger it, and it'll last for 2 turns. Barbarossa. Barbarossa has Samurai plus chance to attack again after destroying the enemy, and 50% damage when counterattacking. Barbarossa is a general that wants to run in and basically trigger everyone nearby to attack him, so we can smack back really hard and give leadership to everyone. Very powerful, pretty tanky with that martial perk. Easy S tier for Barbarossa. Edward has 80% damage to infantry. Leadership is like with Richard's rumor and logistics. Edward wants to kill, but he also wants to debuff enemies. Leadership is less of an issue though, because it's a 100% chance to trigger. So like if you need a boss to get leadership and you don't have any other safer leaderships nearby, you could use Edward. He could take a few hits. He has less power than Ahsoka considering inspiration, but he has the better perk of leadership. I would say Edward, a very low B, maybe high C. Not amazing, but you're sort of forced to use Edward over Ahsoka if you're running a pure cavalry team. Shingen has minus 50% damage received when attacked by archers. I don't know why he's using the infantry version of it compared to the cavalry. I mean, there's no difference. It's just weird how he has that one. He has attack expert, which gives him more damage than Hannibal, but Hannibal has more damage because of his 100% anti-infantry. E tier for Shingen. Shingen just doesn't have the power like Hannibal does. He just doesn't bring anything interesting to the table. Whereas Hannibal brings just a little bit of something, Shingen just brings nothing really. and Hugh does a better job of being anti-archer, and there's another cavalry general that we're going to discuss soon that does it even better than Hugh Being. Belisarius has mediocre double stunning. No braveness, so it's not safe double stunning, but it is double stunning nonetheless with Spy and Bugle. It works well. It works nicely. You could use him on a pure infantry team, but if you're using anything mixed, you probably won't use Belisarius. I would give him a C though because of his double stunning capabilities though. Jeeb has 50% chance to have no retaliation and 30% damage to cavalry. Can attack again after killing the enemy. His trap gives some 75 damage reduction when stepping on a trap. Very niche, very, very situational, almost completely useless. His armored expert gives minus 30% damage to all allies and self for 3 turns in a 2-block radius. I would say Jeeb is the better archer armored gen compared to Yi Sun-Sin. Even though Yi Sun-Sin has the better offensive master, Jeeb's chance to attack again lets him gather rage more often, so more often than not, Jeeb is triggering his, while Yi Sun-Sin is still gathering rage. And just put him under a few commanders and you'll be able to do the damage necessary to gather, rage. Low B tier for me. Joan of Arc, minus 40% damage received and plus 50% damage when counterattacking, and Bravery, which we discussed earlier, no low morale, no chaos. Cure Expert, 150 health for self and allies for 3 turns in a 2-tile radius. Joan of Arc, pretty tanky general, not as tanky as her male counterpart Baton, but still pretty tanky. Very nice support general, not as supportive as Baton, again, but still a low B tier. Moctezuma, this is the guy that I was talking about with Caesar. Moctezuma has 75% chance to not retaliate, 30% damage to cavalry, minus 50% damage received when attacked by cavalry. Moctezuma has Caesar's healing, but the leadership to give even more supportive capabilities. I would give him an A tier. Henry, D tier. El Cid, 50% damage to archers with ambush, F tier. Wallace has the same skills as Richard, and because of that mass fire and the bugle, I would give him a low D tier. Siriotai is definitely a very powerful support gen for cavalry. Gets healed when killed, inspiration to buff up her damage, braveness to keep her longevity. Very, very, very supportive. Not as strong as her counterparts Edward and Ahsoka, but her ability to stay alive longer is definitely way more useful. I give Siriotai a very high A tier. Solomon has minus 4% damage received. His emblem gives 61 attack, 71 defense, 419 HP, 613 hits, and 5% regen based off max health every turn. B tier without and a low A tier with. Solomon has the best crit stats of a free-to-play general, which is nice to have, but Solomon just isn't really unique. He's defensive cavalry, but we have defensive cavalry that have more reliable healing, as Solomon's badge is pay to win. So if you're not pay to win, you have a less self-sustaining tanky cavalry general. And another cavalry general that we'll discuss very soon, in fact next, does his job pretty well defensive wise, but has self-sustainability. Saladin has the same skills as Hugh Being. His item gives 70 attack, 300 HP, 40 regen, and a 50% chance to trigger mass fire. A tier without it, S tier with his item. Very powerful, good support, good at walling archers. He's basically what Solomon could have been. Oda Nobunaga is probably one of the best generals to use on any team. Oda Nobunaga has 50% chance of no retaliation, plus 30% damage to cavalry, mass fire, His emblem gives 103 attack, 3 speed, 797 hit, 11% crit chance. It gives an additional 80 defense, 360 HP, and a chance to cause burning. S tier without and with. Oda combines impressive power with amazing support. Leadership and Spy is one of the best combos for support. Yusunsen. Yusunsen has 50% chance to not retaliate, 30% damage against cavalry, 70% damage against archers, minus 50% damage received for self and nearby allies, and for 3 turns in a 2-tile radius. Navigation, 30% chance to trigger Rumor at Sea. I would say get that to level 8 at least, because at level 8 it lasts for 2 turns compared to level 6 for Ruber. I don't know why they did that. His weapon gives 105 attack, 7% crit chance, 18% crit damage, and 3 range when at sea. I would say mid B tier without and high B tier with. Very powerful anti-archer and safer when at sea. But he just doesn't have much power outside of that. He has Bugle, which is a more cheap version of Oda Nobunaga. He's not bad, but he's not amazing. You have better armor master or expert generals that have mobility, so they can gather it more quickly than Yusunsen. So, outside of a pure archer team, you won't use him much. Columbus. Columbus. 200% damage to fort units, 50% damage when counterattacking, and chance to cause burning. The enemy cannot be countered when attacking. F tier. Navigation and alert completely go against one another. I guess he just... No. You have Cleopatra, who you get for free, that does so much more than Columbus. And Khalid, who is a coin general, can also do better than Columbus. Just don't use Columbus. Just don't. Yoshitsune, he has Samurai, which is no combat effectiveness will not decrease as you go under half health. F tier. Yoshitsune just doesn't have... it's just another grade tier that just doesn't bring anything. If you're not a commander and you're grade tier, you're gonna be F, or at best a D tier if you bring something interesting. There's not much of a use of using grade tier general. Batukan, leadership saves him from F tier. That's about it though. Singa has the same perks as Li Shimin, but he's just worse than Li Shimin. He doesn't have the self-sustaining as Li Shimin. He doesn't have the power of Li Shimin. C tier. Nothing special about Singa, really. And for what he gives, which is not a lot, you only have to save like around 300 medals more to get Li Shimin, who's way more superior. So, C tier for Singa. Peter. Peter has 100%. His item gives 100 attack, 200 hit, 10% crit chance, 14% crit damage, and 30% damage to infantry and archers with a chance of causing burns. High B tier without, low E tier with. The gun definitely helps with his power a bit. Catherine is the general that I was talking about with Robin Hood. Exact same skill set as Robin Hood, but Catherine has 75% chance for no retaliation and 30% damage to cavalry, and the anti-archer perk of Yi Sun Sin. I would say C tier for Catherine. Lincoln has 50% damage to cavalry, so if a general that wants to go against cavalry but doesn't have anything to help him go against the cavalry, like no defensive bonus, no braveness, no leadership, pretty mid infantry general. Janzi has decent power, 75% chance of no retaliation with 30% extra damage to cavalry. Archer commander is definitely the reason why she's so high up. Archers already have decent power, like I said, with inspiration. B tier for her. Blucher is a high B tier. I would say he's probably better than G because Blucher is just tankier, better stats, you know. If you're running a mix between archer and cavalry, I suppose you could use both. But if you're like desperate for slots, like every slot matters, I would definitely say Blucher over Jeeb. Nelson has the same perks as Robin Hood, but he just doesn't have amazing power. No anti outside of the generic anti cavalry. Low A tier for Nelson. James Wolfe, 75% damage to cavalry, F tier. Haiichiro is the other artillery commander. 200% damage to forts, 50% damage when counterattacking, and can cause a burning. His item gives him 110 attack, 20% crit damage, 25 regen, 15% experience gain, and he will always crit when at sea. I would say mid B without and low A with. Very powerful artillery general. Bismarck has 200% damage to forts, 50% damage when counterattacking, and a chance to cause burns. His item gives 50 attack, 50 defense, 600 hit, and gives 1 to 3 range. The thing with Bismarck is Bismarck as a purple general, he already has some nice power, so you could keep Bismarck at level 50. The reason why you'd want to is that at level 50 he has 200% damage to forts and chance to cause burns, and he has destroy. So he loses his anti-cavalry, but he gains that destroy. And for an artillery general, you really, really, really want destroy or some form of chance of no retaliation, because in the end games these towers can become very powerful, and unless you have a leadership general to cripple them, you're gonna want the artillery general to be safe when attacking them. Level 50, high B tier without its item, low A tier with, and level 70, I'd say high B regardless. Li Hongxing has 50% chance to no retaliation and an extra 30% damage to cavalry, and then add on to another 100% damage to cavalry. He's basically the bane of cavalry. Very powerful. Easy S tier. Bataan. Bataan has the same unit perks as Joan, but he just does Joan's job way better. Better survivability, better damage and tankiness. Easy S tier for Bataan. Kamal has bravery. He's very, 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 very decent. I would say at least maybe a high D, I guess, but there's not much of a use for Kamal, really. He's not horrible, but Belisarius does Kamal's job better. Conrad has minus 50% damage received from cavalry, F tier. That's all the generals. I hope you found this guide informative, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. See ya.